Hello, this video is on the subject of roof control. This video will cover the material for the roof control part of the West Virginia Mine Foreman test. The format for the video is question and answer. And this video will also reference the question and answer to the West Virginia Office of Miner Self-Safety Training Mine Foreman Study Guide, and that's the 2019 edition. And these questions are in the roof control part of the study guide. And one of the first things you should talk about, you should be familiar with the different types of roof bolts and the theories of roof bolting, and we will talk a little bit more about that at the end of the video. Question 1, who is required to develop a roof control plan of the mine? And the answer is the mine operator. So the mine operator or the company develops a roof control plan and submits it for approval. Question 2, who approves the mine operator's roof control plan? The answer is the director of the West Virginia Office of Miner Self-Safety and Training. So the operator develops a roof control plan and submits it to the director of Office of Miner Self-Safety and Training for approval. Question 3, how often must the approved roof control plan be reviewed? The answer is periodically, but at least every 6 months. So a representative of the director of Miner Self-Safety and Training will come to the mine at least every 6 months and review the roof control plan and just make sure that the plan that they have in place for that mine is working. Question 4, who reviews the roof control plan every 6 months? And these questions kind of repeat themselves a little bit here, but the answer is the director of the West Virginia Office of Miner Self-Safety and Training. So just in summary of these last 4 questions, the operator develops a roof control plan and submits it. The director of West Virginia Office of Miner Self-Safety and Training will approve that plan, and then the director of Office of Miner Self-Safety and Training or his representative will come to the mine at least every 6 months and review the plan. Question 5, when are apprentice miners allowed to set temporary supports in a working section? And the answer is when under the direct supervision of a certified miner. So if you have an apprentice miner setting timbers on a section, that's fine. They can do that, but they have to be under the supervision of a certified or an experienced miner. Question 6, what should be done before a miner is engaged in any activity involving the securing of roof ribs during a shift? And the answer is the immediate supervisor shall, at the onset of the shift, orally review those parts of the roof control plan relevant to the type of mining and roof control to be pursued by such miner. So this statement says that at the beginning of every shift, your supervisor will orally review, which means that they will read some part of the roof control plan to everyone that's involved in roof support. And I'm of the opinion everyone at the mine is involved in roof support or should know the plan. Now, interesting thing about this is we used to have to document on your on-shift report what part of the roof control plan that you went over and what time you done that. That no longer has to be documented on the on-shift report, but you still have to do this. So it's very important if you're a section boss that at the beginning of every shift that you read some part of the roof control plan to your crew, and what you're reading to them should be relevant to the type of mining that you're doing. It's very important that you do that. Question 7, for the safety of miners, what's the maximum width of roadways or entries? And the answer is they shall not exceed 20 feet in width unless additional cross-sectional support is added. So when we're mining on advance, the maximum width of the entries is 20 feet. Now this will be listed in your roof control plan, and you may have a plan that don't allow 20 feet, but 20 feet is the maximum that they're going to allow unless you add additional support. So some mines may want to put like track and belt in the same entry, and they may cut 22, 23, maybe even 24 feet wide in that entry, but they're going to make you put additional support in. You may have to put a couple more roof bolts in each row, and maybe even after the tailpiece, out by the tailpiece may have to have timbers, but they're going to make you put additional support in. So 20 feet wide is the maximum they'll allow without putting in additional support. Question 8, how may falls of roof and slate be controlled? And the answer is by careful testing, inspection, and systematic support. And I think systematic support is important. I have a little picture here, but after mining a place, the newly exposed top will build up pressure and may even deflect a small amount. You'll never be able to see this deflection. It could be so small, but it will build up pressure. And pressure will continue to build up until the place is bolted. So whatever pressure builds up there, in pounds or whatever, will be there forever, even after you bolt it. So systematic support means you should bolt a place as soon as possible after mining it. And your roof control plan maybe will have some statements in there. If you're taking deep cuts more than 20 feet, maybe you can't have more than 2 of those down at a time, maybe not for more than 24 hours. But systematic support really means that as soon as possible after mining a place, you should bolt it, and that will keep that stress or pressure from building up. That's just a good roof control practice. Question 9, how is the strength of roof affected by moisture? And the answer is the roof is often weakened by moisture, and I think that's probably true. Anytime you have water running out of your roof, it could get worse. Question 10, main requirements of good timbers. And the answer is they are proper length, they are straight grained, they are sufficient cross-sectional area, and both ends are sawed square. Question 11, what is required of all active underground roadways, travelways, and working places? And the answer is the roof and ribs shall be supported or controlled to adequately protect persons from falls of slate or of roof or ribs. So we have to control the roof. We have a minimum roof control plan, and we have to follow that plan. Even if we knew the top would never fall, we still have to follow the plan. But if we have adverse roof conditions or anything, we have to, and we are required to control that to protect persons from falls of roof or ribs. So you always have to support the roof, no matter, if you had additional support, additional bolts, timbers, cribs, whatever, you're required to do whatever it takes to keep the top from falling and injuring people. Question 12, when should broken, rotten, or inferior timbers be replaced? And that's promptly. Question 13, what shall the operator provide at or near each working face and at other locations in a coal mine to adequately support the top? And the answer is the operator is required to provide an ample supply of suitable material of proper size in accordance with the approved roof control plan at or near each working face and at other locations. So this is quite a long answer, but I think the operator is required to provide suitable roof support material provided at the bolter. And also, I think you have a roof control plan that will indicate some emergency roof support material that you have to have on a section, and the operator of the mine must make sure that that's provided. Question 14, what shall be done with loose, dangerous, or unusual overhanging ribs, brows, or roof? And the answer is they shall be removed or carefully secured. So if we have a rib that's loose, or a rock in the top gap down, or any adverse condition, what should you do? You should remove it or carefully secure it. Either one of them corrects the problem. If you have a rock that's gapped down, if you pull it down, then it's not going to fall on someone. Or if you put a bolt in it and secure it, that makes it safe as well. 15, how shall timbers be set along track haulage ways? And the answer is when timbers are set along the track, proper clearance must be maintained. And the proper clearance on the track is we always need 24 inches of clearance between a piece of equipment on the track and any other object. Question 16, when setting crossbars or taking down loose rock, what precautions should be taken? And the answer is temporary supports should be set to protect the worker. So temporary posts should be set to protect the worker. So when we're trying to support top or crossbars or pulling down loose rock, we want to make sure that's safe for the person that's doing that. So you may evaluate that you would need a couple or three or whatever temporary posts to protect that worker. Question 17, what kind of wood should cap pieces be made of? And that's softwood. Question 18, what protection is a cap piece to a timber? And the answer is the cap piece will crush without the strength of the timber being affected. So here's a little picture. So I have my post and I have this red cap piece on it. So the cap piece is softwood, so when it takes the weight, it will crush and it will absorb that weight without the weight being transferred to the post. And hopefully the post will not break. 19, what is the advantage of putting a cap piece under a timber? And the answer is the cap piece provides a greater bearing surface and the post cannot be pushed into the bottom. So this is a kind of interesting question. So they're saying if you put a cap piece on the bottom and as that post starts taking weight, it cannot be pushed into the bottom because the surface that you're trying to push in is the size of the cap piece, and that won't happen. And that in theory, that's correct. But a little bit of controversy I've heard at the mine is I've been told before that you couldn't set a cap piece under a timber, and I never have done that. And there's always controversy, people talking about that, and I don't think anybody really knew the answer whether you could or couldn't. But this question suggests that you can. And it also suggests it may be better to do that because the post cannot be pushed into the bottom. Again, this information may be in your roof control plan, and maybe you can review your plan and see if that is allowed or not allowed. Question 20, what are some common errors in setting timbers? The answer is setting the timbers on uneven surfaces, having too small of cap pieces, not wedging them properly, not setting them vertically, and by using inadequate, too small, or crooked timbers. So that question on the test could be a common sense type answer. A question on a test like that may be A, B, and C, and they list all those things as A, B, and C. Correct choice would be choice D, all of the above. So these are common sense things. Question 21, how should a post be set in a pitched place? And the answer is the post should be set with the top slightly up the pitch. And I've been told that this is on the test, and the answers are slightly up the pitch and mostly up the pitch. So you're looking for slightly up the pitch. And maybe I can try to explain that a little bit. If our mine is perfectly leveled and the post is set straight up and down, but if the place is pitched, and I have this exaggerated, well, if it's pitched like this, when you set the post, it needs to be vertical. It needs to be plumb. So it needs to be straight up and down. So with this post, it would be slightly up the pitch or up the hill. Question 22, what's the greatest danger from pillaring operations? And the answer is when pillaring, the greatest danger is frequent falls of roof and coal. And the fall of coal could be defined as a rib roll. So, in pillaring, we do have roof falls in pillaring, but they're controlled and they're in by where people are going to be, and we know we're going to have them and all that. But when we really get into problems is when we start getting weight and it starts falling in areas where people could be or having rib rolls. 23, how can the danger of roof falls be reduced when pillaring? And the answer is by having a good mining plan. This plan will allow adequate falls, which relieve the weight on the pillars, and by having straight pillar lines by proper and systematic timbering, careful inspection, and supervision. So we do have a plan when we're pillaring, and that plan will be approved in your roof control plan. And if that plan is followed correctly, hopefully you will have adequate falls in the mined out areas in the gob, and that will relieve the weight on the pillars in the active mining area. So make sure you follow your plan. If you follow the approved plan, hopefully everything will go well for you pillaring. Question 24, proper method of testing the roof. And the answer is by sight and then sound and vibration when tapped with a solid instrument. So if you're going to be working in an area, and you should look at the top and evaluate it from looking at it. And if it looks good, at that point you would do the sound and vibration method when tapped with a solid instrument and see if it was firm or the sound of it to establish whether it's safe for you to be there. Question 25, what's a kettle bottom? That's a large boulder with tapered edges that is embedded loosely in the roof. Some of you may work where you have kettle bottoms, and when you encounter those, there may be something in your roof control plan that addresses what you need to do to support them. Question 26, what is roof bolting? And the answer to that is a method of supporting the roof by tying the roof strata together. Question 27, what is used to tie the roof strata together? And the answer to that is roof bolts and bearing plates. Question 28, what's the minimum length of roof bolt to be used? And the answer is at least the minimum that is specified in the approved roof control plan. Question 29, when roof bolting, how shall the bolts be anchored? And the answer to that is anchored as specified in the approved roof control plan. Question 30, when roof bolting, what's the proper roof bolt spacing? And the answer is the bolt spacing will be listed in the approved roof control plan. The bolts must not be placed to exceed that distance. So almost everything that you need to know about roof bolting, if they ask a question on the test about roof bolting, look for the roof control plan. Whatever is listed in the approved roof control plan is what you're required to do. Question 31, what's torque? And that's the twisting force applied to the bolt is defined as the torque. So the twisting force applied to the bolt is the torque. Question 32, how tight should roof bolts be installed? And the answer is the torque on an installed roof bolt should be what is specified in the approved roof control plan. That's very important, whatever is in the roof control plan. But I think in their study guides, a typical value could be 125 to 175 foot-pounds. The function of the torque on a roof bolt is based on the strength of the bolt. So a grade 40 steel bolt, which is maybe the lowest grade bolt that you would have at the mine, would be 125 to 175 foot-pounds. But as you had better roof bolts, bigger diameter roof bolts, the torque may go up, which is not a bad thing. We just have to make sure the torque on a roof bolt matches the strength of the roof bolt that we're using. 33, how do you determine the torque of a roof bolt? And that's by using a torque wrench. And the torque is the twisting force, so I always imagine when you do use a torque wrench, well, you put the wrench on the bolt and you try to twist it. So that's the twisting force is the torque, and you determine that by using a torque wrench. 34, what's the tension of a roof bolt? And the answer is that the tightening force applied between the bearing plate and the anchor. Question 35, how can the tension of a roof bolt be approximated? And the answer is by multiplying the torque reading by 40. And I do not understand that question. I would just suggest that you remember the tension of a roof bolt can be approximated by multiplying the torque reading by 40. I've tried to research that question. I've tried to ask people, and I can't come up with any way to explain that to you. So just try to remember that in case it's on the test. 36, what's torque bleed off? And the answer is a loss of torque after the bolt has been installed. Question 37, what causes torque bleed off? And the answer is torque bleed off happens when we use conventional bolts with an expansion shell. The expansion shell is anchored into soft rock such as shale, and the high installation pressure causes the rock to yield and the bolt slips a small amount. I have worked where this happened, where we set these conventional roof bolts with the expansion shell, and you set them today and they're torqued properly, and you come back tomorrow and check the torque on them and they're loose. That was not really an uncommon thing, but fortunately I don't think we use many of those bolts now, but that is torque bleed off when they lose the torque after being installed. Question 38, when spot bolting on Tri-College Road, shall machines be required to have an ATRS? And the answer to that is no. So if you have a track mine, you may have a bolter that's mounted on the track, and it may be somewhat of even a homemade bolter, and it does not have to have an ATRS on it. And certainly if you had a trolley wire, the ATRS would be a problem, but anytime that you're bolting top, you're bolting it because you think it's not supported properly. Even if you didn't have an ATRS on this, you would probably need to set some timbers to protect yourself. Question 39, at a mine where pillaring has not been previously performed, when shall the company or operator notify the district mine inspector from the West Virginia Office of Miner Health Safety and Training? And the answer is at least 5 working days before the pillaring begins. And what they want to do, you have an approved plan to pillar, but you've never pillared before at this mine. So the state wants at least a 5-day notice, and what they're going to do, they're going to come to the mine and be there when you go over the roof control plan with pillaring. And that's going to be a fairly formal process or a meeting where you're going to make sure with maps and charts on a wall or on a PowerPoint or something that people know exactly what to do when pillaring. And again, the state wants at least a 5-day notice for that. If you could give them more, that would be good, just so they could make sure they could be there. Question 40 wants a test hole, and the answer to that is test holes are drilled into the mine roof to determine roof conditions. 41, what's the depth of a test hole? And the answer is test hole shall be drilled to a depth of at least 12 inches above the anchorage point of the bolts being used. Again, that's going to be the minimum. You're going to have to do at least that. Some roof control plans may require you to drill them deeper, but some companies may have this in their plan to do 12 inches and may want them a little bit deeper. So again, the test holes evaluate the roof conditions, and they have to be at least 12 inches above the bolts that are normally being used. 42, what's the normal depth of cut with a continuous miner? And the answer is a normal cut is defined as 20 feet. And this was established when continuous miners had an operator's deck and was determined by measuring the furthest point of the cutting drum to the machine operator's controls. So this is just established by that way. We used to just always cut 20 feet. We didn't have a remote control miner. So now what we say, normal cuts are 20 feet, and extended cuts is anything greater than 20. So if you have an extended cut plan at your mine, that basically just means that you're cutting cuts deeper than 20 feet. 43, what's the maximum roof bolt spacing? And the answer is the maximum roof bolt spacing is usually 4 feet, unless otherwise specified in the approved roof control plan. So typically 4 feet, but it could be specified as something else in the approved roof control plan. 44, what's the maximum distance temporary support is set from location permanent support is being installed? And the answer is 12 inches. And this question is the distance from the ATRS to the drill head on the roof bolter is not supposed to be more than 12 inches. 45, what is required at the entrance to any unsupported area? And the answer is a warning device or a physical barrier is used to warn people of any unsupported area. So in most places I've ever worked, we used a warning device, which is maybe reflectors reflective tape or something that hangs down from the next to last row of roof supports. I have heard of physical barriers. I taught a class at a mine one time, and the guy said that they used a physical barrier and they called them baby gates, but they were just made out of PVC pipe, and they hung them from the top. So someone would be walking up into that area, they would obviously see that baby gate hanging down and not go past it. I also taught a class one time, and they said that an inspector had seen where somebody had went out past roof support, so they used a physical barrier and they just hung a chain across some bolts, so you couldn't get past that chain up into the unbolted area. So to warn people of an unsupported area, a warning device or a physical barrier. Question 46, what work can be done in by permanent roof support? And the answer is that the only work allowed in by permanent roof support is the installation of temporary roof support. So we can't do anything in by permanent roof support. The only thing you can do is to set temporary supports, and that's just going to be for the purpose of making it safer to set the temporary roof supports. 47, what are sight lines? And answer that, sight lines are used to maintain direction of mining in entries, rooms, crosscuts, and pillar splits. So I think what we can say here is anytime that the miner is mining for any reason, mining coal, they have to have center lines so we can maintain direction of mining. Question 48, what is the minimum diameter of a post used for roof support? And the answer to that is 4 inches. And that's up to 60 inches. So a post up to 5 foot has to be 4 inches in diameter. As the height goes up, so does the diameter of the post, but just for the mine foreman test, the minimum diameter of a post is 4 inches. And if a square, rectangular, or split post is used, it must have a cross-sectional area of not less than 13 square inches. So here's a little diagram I have here. So a round post that has a diameter of 4 inches has an area of 12.56 square inches. So any post that's not round, if it's split or rectangular, you have to make sure that it has an area of 13 square inches. We're just rounding that 12.56 up to 13. So here, if you can see my little flash, my pointer here, for example, a post that measures 4 inches by 3 inches would be 12 square inches, and that wouldn't be big enough. So a post that measures 4 inches by 4 inches would be 16 square inches, and that would be big enough. So if you're using a rectangular or sawed post in a mine, check the dimensions and make sure that they're adequate size. 49, what's fast feed on the boom feed of roof bolt machines? And the answer is a feed rate greater than 12 inches per second of the boom feed is considered fast feed. So 12 inches per second is fast feed, greater than 12 inches per second. Question 50, when installing tension roof bolts, how often is a torque check required? And the answer is at the first bolt installed and 1 of every 4 thereafter. So the first bolt you install in a place with tension roof bolts, you should check the torque, and 1 of every 4 after that. 51, can trailing cables be anchored on tension roof bolts that are used for roof support? The answer to that is no. 52, what's the minimum size of the surface of bearing plates on jacks used for roof support? And the answer to that is 36 square inches, and this would be a plate that measures at least 6 by 6 inches. So here's a picture. I've just got this off the internet, but here's a jack that maybe we have something like this for roof support, and as you tighten it up, you turn it, the bolt goes out and thread it out to set tight against the top. But the plate on the top that comes into contact with the roof has to be at least 36 square inches, and that would be a 6 by 6 plate. 6 times 6 is 36, so that would be 36 square inches. 53, at a mine where pillaring has not been previously performed, what must the company or operator do before pillaring begins? And the answer is the company or operator must review plans concerning pillar extraction with all persons to be performing such work. So again, this is going to be a fairly formal meeting of going over that roof control plan, and we have to do that before we start pillaring. And also, if you remember a few questions ago, if we've never pillared before at the mine, we have to notify the state within 5 working days so they can come to the mine and make sure we do this. But we have to make sure everyone understands everything about the plan when we start pillaring. Question 54, what shall be required on all ATRS hydraulic jacks to prevent support failure and of a sudden loss of hydraulic pressure? And that's check valves. So the valve bank on the roof bolter will have check valves in the control for the hydraulic jacks on the ATRS. Question 55, what's the minimum dead weight supported by an approved ATRS system? And that's 11,250 pounds, and this must be certified by a professional engineer. 56, how shall all roof bolts be installed? And the answer is that in accordance with manufacturer's specifications. And this will be listed in your approved roof control plan. 57, during pillar extraction, all non-essential personnel shall remain where? And that answer to that is out by the last open cross cut of the place where coal is being extracted. So when we're pillaring, it's a fairly hazardous thing that we do in the mining industry. And non-essential personnel means if they don't need to be there. If you do not need to be up there where we're pillaring in the last open cross cut, you shouldn't be. So if you're non-essential, if you're not performing a job there, you should be out by that last open cross cut. 58, who has the primary responsibility to prevent injuries and death resulting from working under unsupported roof? And the answer is that's the mine operator or company. So the mine operator or company has the responsibility to make sure that people do not work in unsupported top or roof areas. Question 59, with second mining, how many roadways are allowed to the final push out? And the answer is that only one roadway that is a maximum width of 16 feet. So the final push out, I'm not sure that we even do that now. I'm not sure that we take that final little block. But I think this question is on the test, and I think this could be 2 questions. I think they may ask, how many roadways are allowed to the final push out? And the answer to that is 1. And then maybe later, they may say a roadway leading to the final push out is a maximum width of what? And that would be 16 feet. So you would timber that down to 16 feet and then only one roadway. 60, what's the minimum accepted distance between the miner operator and the unsupported roof while in extended length cuts? And the answer is that is a minimum of 2 rows of roof bolts. And I think we always just stay 2 rows of roof bolts back from the unbolted area. And I think it would be a good idea. I think your roof control plan probably requires that you put some kind of barrier there, whether you hang ribbons or a physical barrier at that location so people knows to not go past that point. Question 61, how shall all openings of unsupported crosscuts be supported prior to travel in by the crosscut? And the answer is that at least 2 rows of temporary supports on 4-foot centers. So if a crosscut's not bolted, you cannot go up that entry and past that unbolted area unless you had 2 rows of posts on 4-foot centers. And I have a picture here, depending on the device you're watching this on, it may be hard for you to see, but we have all this area, these red boxes are roof bolts, and this crosscut here, where my pointer is going back and forth, is not bolted. So before you walked up this entry here, you would have to set 2 rows of posts on 4-foot centers. You cannot walk up there if those posts are not set. Question 62, what shall be provided to determine when a maximum depth and extended cut is attained? And that is a conspicuous reference mark. And what this means, if you have a plan in your mind that you're allowed to cut 34 feet, I'm just making that number up. So you have extended cuts, you can cut 34 feet. Well, how does the miner operator know where 34 feet is? So there needs to be some kind of reference mark, a conspicuous reference mark. Conspicuous kind of means obvious or easy to see. You know, it could be at some point on the boom of the miner. Maybe if the cut's 34 feet, it won't be that. Maybe it's something at the shuttle car or something. But there has to be some kind of reference mark for the miner operator to know when he has got to the point of the maximum depth of a cut. Question 63, how many adjacent unbolted crosscuts are allowed when mining extended cuts? And that's 2. And that is probably on the test, and it's actually 2. You could have 2 crosscuts adjacent to each other, not bolting with extended cuts. Okay, so know the theories of roof bolting. So we have beam building. So the roof bolts provide support by creating beams of different strata. Bolts are used to bind these strata together, much like the manufacturer of plywood. I mean, I don't know if that's a good example, but you know, we have several layers of rock, so we put these. We just create one beam. So we've taken small layers, and with the roof bolts, we kind of bind those together. So now we have a 4-foot thick beam, which is very strong, or maybe 5 foot. So we take a lot of smaller beams and we create one thick one that's strong enough to support itself. We also have suspension, and the roof bolts tie the lower layers of the rock or roof to a stronger stratum located above. So the lower layers are suspended from the upper stratum. So I'm not sure how often we do that, but that would be where we would have a real strong layer at the top, and we would just hang those other layers off that. I think beam building is much better than suspension. So that's the end of this video. Thank you.